Good evening, everyone. Severe Weather Team 9 meteorologist Nathan John joining you for this edition of Date at 8. And some rain, snow coming our way for tomorrow on top of some windy conditions. And from there, the snow chances just continue as we go through the weekend. A couple more chances, at least, for some snow following tomorrow ahead going into the weekend. So while these systems are more of a rapid fire as we go through the weekend, typically these are weaker systems. We're not tracking a major winter storm coming our way, but certainly adds up. And the rapid fire of some of these weak systems certainly could still produce some impacts to these commutes as we extend through the weekend. So without further ado, thanks as always for joining us. Let's jump on into things here for this edition of Nate at 8. And again, tracking that rain, snow for tomorrow, some windy conditions, and then we'll just briefly touch on when to watch for more snow into the weekend. Now, our current temperatures now are into the 30s, and we are not dropping much as we go through the night. And temperatures are going to be pretty stable, really hovering around this range, around the mid 30s, even mid upper 30s tomorrow morning, closer to 40 tomorrow afternoon. So temperatures aren't going to budge too much from where they're currently at. And you'll notice that a lot of us are above freezing, and mid upper 30s is typically the range where we start to think of more rain for a precipitation type rather than snow. But there is one key player here when it comes to determining precipitation type for us for tomorrow morning, because even that range mid 30s, upper 30, still on that very fine line of precipitation type between rain and snow. And the one thing we're still looking at is the dry air. So this is that one wild card, if you will, when it comes to determining, when we're riding a very fine line, what precipitation type can we deal with. And we felt how cold it was this morning, and part of the equation of getting that cold this morning was the fact that we had some dry air in place. So this dry air still in place. Dew points are in the 20s, temperatures 30s. It's still evidence of some dry air that resides in place. And what happens is, as this precipitation moves into the area, a lot of this that's initially moving in is going to be hindered by this dry air. So for a lot of tonight, we are likely dry. But we'll notice what's happening is, as this precipitation is moving in and struggling to punch through the layer of dry air, we get a process what's called wet bulbing, or think of it as this precipitation's falling, it's evaporating or sublimating before it ever reaches the ground. And that does help then, over time when that process is occurring, that we're seeing that layer of dry air, we're starting to see that moisten. So we're seeing less of that dry air, more moisture developing in that layer of our atmosphere. And during that time, what happens is temperatures actually cool. It's a cooling process. So that's our wild card, that, even while, with that process, these temperatures aren't budging much. If we just drop these temperatures by just a few degrees, that's all it takes, just 2-3 degrees difference, and we can start to see a change of precipitation type from a cold rain to that wet, heavy snow. And that's what we can see come into play for tomorrow. You can see our low pressure system, our Clipper system right now, centering there into the upper Midwest. This is going to be dropping southeast into our area for tomorrow morning. So let's jump into Futurecast. And again, for a lot of tonight, we are likely going to end up dry. I think there's a possibility of something light, some sprinkles, some flurries, at least breaking through the latter part of tonight. It would be very light in that mix that we do see going throughout the night. Again, I think a lot of the night ends up dry. And we're going to start to watch then tomorrow morning. And the timing of this looks to get bumped back a little bit. I know Futurecast is still showing here closer to 5 a.m., but some of these high resolution models that I was just looking at coming up onto this edition of Nate at 8 before we went live, I did notice a trend where the timing is getting pushed back a little bit. So I would be surprised if we're really not noticing a lot of this precipitation breaking out until even past 8 a.m. So I think there is that saving grace that we can get through a lot of the morning commute with not too much precipitation. Again, I know this model is still showing a little early arrival time, but I definitely think that's a possibility that we could not get to really the core of this precipitation until closer to 8 a.m. and then on into the latter part of the morning. So I think when it comes to impacts to a lot of schools, I think the best bet is no delay and just get to school, because I think a lot of these, area schools leading up to 8 a.m., I just don't think that there's going to be too much in terms of precipitation, especially anything that's going to be impactful. So I think for a lot of area schools, it shouldn't be too much of an issue leading up to 8 a.m., to get to school. I think that leading up to 8 o'clock in the morning, there's still not too much to be had. I think it's more after that point, once we get past 8 and 9 o'clock in the morning, this is when we open up that window of time where we can start to see that wet, heavy snow. And it's a narrow window of time, really likely on the order of just a few hours. So we get closer to 8, 9 o'clock, and then this only continues up closer towards midday. And then notice we do eventually then get that transition to rain. So it's a brief window of time. I think it's primarily for locations along and north of I-70, further south of I-70, especially Tyler, Wetzel County, Southern Noble, Southern Monroe. Those areas could hold more of a cold rain. But I think for a lot of us, I do think for a lot of us, the majority of us, we do see that just enough drop in those temperatures, thanks to that dryer in place. And that once this precipitation breaks out in the latter part of the morning, then a lot of us get more of that wet, heavy snow. This again continues up closer to noon to midday. And then once we get past that, it's more of a shower activity. So just more scattered in nature, but it does look primarily rain at this point. Highs upper 30s, near 40 degrees. And we'll notice that, a lot of these accumulations that we can see, especially on our roads, any slick road conditions, we can lose a lot of any accumulations that we get in snow for the afternoon. And we notice a big improvement in road conditions. I think really the slippery road conditions tomorrow is going to be really in line with the wet, heavy snow. So, with temperatures are sitting above freezing and even, mid upper 30s. So we're talking, even well above, 5+ degrees, possibly above freezing, where we are, getting into the upper 30s in the latter part of the morning. But even with that, if the snow is heavy enough, it can still stick. But the key there is, of course, you have to have that to continue. So once we start to see the taper off, these conditions likely just quickly improve, right? And again, we can start to even lose a lot of what we do accumulate in the morning through the afternoon, especially with that cold rain, really eats away at snow cover. And we see a big improvement in road conditions likely for the afternoon. Now, on the tail end of this, as we get closer towards 5, 6 o'clock, pretty close to right after the time the sun sets, very early tomorrow night. This is when we get a little bit of snow on the tail end. We wouldn't be looking at much for accumulations with this, likely less than an inch of anything measurable. Behind that, from the snow showers, then can linger into tomorrow night. And once we really get, up to midnight and even maybe a little before that, there's probably not too much that continues past that point into Thursday morning. There's not too much to be had. But notice those temperatures well into the 20s. So then our concern becomes, we've had some rain, that heavier snow. We've washed off, a lot of that salt that's on our roads. We start to wash that off. So that being said, our surfaces are likely still wet at this point into tomorrow night. So anything that is not treated can turn to ice. So then we run that course of then watch for some areas of ice developing, especially bridges and overpasses first early tomorrow night. And that's what's to watch for as we extend into Thursday morning. And outside of some flurries Thursday, we look to end up staying dry. So I went through a lot there, right? That was a lot to try to keep track of. So we'll put it into one graphic here and try to make it easier to digest and also touch on the accumulation. So how much could we deal with? Well, I think for most of us, that wet, heavy snow, you can get that quick burst, at least up to an inch. I think there's a possibility of up to 3, but it's likely more confined towards Columbiana County, maybe portions of northern Tuscarawas, Carroll, but it's not widespread. I think a lot of us, we're getting that quick burst up to an inch, maybe 2. And again, that's not much, but it's a narrow window of time. That's why. And I think that, the narrow window of time starts to open up closer to 9 a.m., continuing then past 11 a.m. But once we get closer to noon, again, that's when we see that big improvement. So it's a very narrow window of time, 2-3 hours. It's not much, but that late morning towards midday time frame, which again, it's good that I think that we can get past 8 o'clock, or at least get up to 8 o'clock, where there's still not too many impacts for us. I think that's a possibility where we can get through a lot of the morning commute where we're not dealing with much precipitation wise. But 8-9 o'clock, it starts to get a little bit later than that. And that's when we can start to see that snow really break out across the area and then continue for the latter part of the morning. So, I start to watch especially getting closer to 9 a.m. and then on, even as early as 8, maybe, just expand that time slot a little bit more. But that late morning time frame in general is when to watch. It's a narrow window of time, but that's where we can see roads become slick. We also have to keep in mind these wind gusts are up to about 40 miles per hour. So when you have that wet, heavy snow and those gusty winds, the visibility is very low. So that's another thing to take into consideration, that not only can roads become covered, at least it's for some locations in that late morning time frame with this wet, heavy snow, but visibility can be drastically reduced. So that's another variable that can make travel difficult for the latter part of tomorrow morning with that wet, heavy snow. And again, despite temperatures as warm as they are, the snow can be wet, heavy enough, some big snowflakes certainly possible that we can see that actually stick even despite that. Again, more of just a scattered rain showers, what we'll have through the afternoon. And then on the tail end of this, as shortly after the sun sets, and that's when we'll see that transition back closer to 6-7 o'clock or so, roughly, right after, shortly after the sun sets, likely early on tomorrow night, we can get that transition then back to just a little bit of snow accumulation. That if we do see any more, it'd be less than an inch likely. And again, the big point after that is, while roads are mainly wet through the afternoon, we can get some areas of ice to develop then tomorrow night into Thursday morning. So again, it's likely, some slick spots can't be ruled out for the morning commute. I would still use some caution. I still think it's not a bad idea to allow yourself some extra time to get to your destination tomorrow morning. I think the worst road conditions are likely a little bit past that, again, closer to 9 a.m. up to 11 noon, right around that time frame. We can get the worst road conditions more late morning. So it can be just a little bit past that morning commute, but it is close timing. And then following that in the afternoon, roads are likely wet, and they turn wet rather quickly. I think, it's a big improvement. You can even say within an hour, we could see a big improvement in road conditions from what we do see that can become snow covered to simply just turning wet rather quickly in the afternoon. So you'll notice that even the early afternoon. So once we start to see that transition around noon, closer to 1-2 o'clock, you can see that big improvement where a lot of these roads are just wet. And then again, the roads are still wet into tomorrow night. Temperatures are dropping well in the 20s. And then we deal with areas of ice, bridges, overpasses. They're the first to freeze. All right. We've got the ground's not insulating one side of that road, so it's cooling for both sides. They're the first to freeze, the first to reach that, the potential there for some areas of ice. First surfaces to really keep an eye on early tomorrow night. And then from there, in general, some areas of ice are possible as we do extend throughout tomorrow. So getting a little better idea on the Futurecast snowfall. And again, I just want to really get through a lot of this. I'll catch up on comments, I promise. Just wanted to get through a lot of this because you may have questions that we'll be able to answer when we start to further dive into some of the details here as we go through tomorrow. So Futurecast snowfall. So when it comes to location to location, again, I think the highest amounts are going to be for locations mainly towards Columbiana, Carroll, Tuscarawas. I think that's where we could start to see those accumulations reach 2-3 inches. I think is possible for some spots in those areas. I think for a lot of us, we're getting that quick burst of up to an inch of snow. I can be a little less than that for locations south of I-70. You can see, again, what I talked about earlier, that these locations here towards Tyler, Wetzel County, Southern Monroe, Southern Noble. So there's certainly potential there with these areas that are further south of I-70 that it's just mainly rain, right? And not getting too much of that wet, heavy snow. But closer to I-70, north of I-70 especially, the best potential there that it's less of that cold rain and more of that wet, heavy snow, and you get that quick burst up to an inch. And for some locations north of Route 22, especially, potential there for exceeding an inch, maybe exceeding 2 inches. Although I don't think that's going to be, a common sight, but it could happen in some spots that totals exceed 2 and at most be 3 inches. But for a lot of us, it's probably, a quick burst there up to an inch of snow, wet, heavy snow, that, yes, can even stick to our roads as heavy as it's going to be. Some of us can exceed an inch up to 2, and I think very few of us are exceeding 2 inches. And the best potential for that's likely towards Columbiana County. If we're seeing anything exceed 2 and get closer to 3 inches, but for a lot of us, we're under that threshold. And again, I know, it's not too much, but it's just that kind of quick burst that that's despite it not being a whole lot of snow, the quick bursts can still make for, in combination with those wind gusts, some bad road conditions for that narrow window of time from late morning. So it's just something else to consider as we go into that period of time late morning. And then for tomorrow night, that as we get that changeover back to some snow, it would be much. Anything measurable, it's less than an inch. Even, there could be a few snow showers lingering overnight tomorrow, but at that point, it's less about any snow accumulation. And at that point, it's more about just watching for some slick spots redevelop. So again, going into this road conditions situation again, and we'll take it more hour by hour basis, just plotting it out again differently. Again, roads conditions, they're likely dry for a good period of tonight. We can have that light wintry mix, at least cause the possibility for some slick spots late tonight. This is past midnight tonight. That possibility runs up to 6, 7 o'clock in the morning. Again, I think it's more of a slick spot scenario. Then I don't foresee any widespread issues until we start getting closer towards 8, 9 o'clock and then on through the latter part of the morning. That's going to be likely our worst road conditions. There'll be more slippery road conditions then, and then a big improvement from midday till 2 o'clock where those roads are likely just turning wet. That'll be the case through the afternoon. And then we'll watch early tomorrow night, even by up to 10 p.m. that we can see some areas of ice developing on our roads. And again, bridges, overpasses are going to be the first to freeze likely for early tomorrow night. So our 9+1 day forecast, and then we'll jump into our comments. So the other question, of course, when's the next round? Well, Friday and Saturday would likely be the following round of some snow. Precipitation type looks less in question at this point, and it's going to be likely just snow. And again, with these systems, for us here in the Ohio Valley, these are rapid fire, some Clipper systems. For us here in the Ohio Valley, these systems are not huge snow producers, right? What we see into Friday and Saturday, while it's still a little early, just based on what we typically deal with Clipper systems in this area, it's a good bet that accumulations can be on the order of a few inches rather than, 5, 6+ inches, right? These Clipper systems, they just don't typically produce that much for us. But, could we deal with Friday into Saturday for each system, a few inches, and, that can add up to 5 or more between the two, Friday and Saturday? Yeah, that is possible. So, certainly enough where more impacts are likely for Friday as well as Saturday. Saturday looks to be more second half of the day. Friday can be both morning and afternoon, and we can deal with more impacts to our commute for both Friday morning as well as Friday afternoon with that snow possible even as we go throughout the day. And again, Saturday looks to be more timing. It could change, it can adjust as we get closer to it. But for now, it looks to be more the second half of Saturday that we're going to be getting some of that snow. So let's jump into the comments. Thank you so much, as always, for tuning in. I appreciate it. Austin, good evening. Today was crazy cold start to this morning. Again, evidence of that dry air, which is that really what can tilt that scale, that fine line, right, between the rain and snow, because with that dry air in place, we get what's called wet bulbing. It's a cooling process for us. So as we see that layer of dry air, once we see more moisture present in that layer of dry air, temperatures can drop, and then we can, trend just a little bit cooler. That can tilt us to more of that wet, heavy snow instead of that cold rain. So it's a very fine line for tomorrow, but I do think we're going to tip the scale a little bit more for most of us on that wet, heavy snow for that brief period of time, especially into the latter part of the morning hours tomorrow. I was bundled up and I still felt the bitter cold air hit my face while wearing a mask, gloves, and toboggan. And yeah, that's a bad thing. About tomorrow too, it's temperatures 30s likely for much of the day. Highs just getting near 40. We could come up short of 40 degrees too, but those wind chills will certainly be a big factor tomorrow. Again, wind gusts up to 35, 40 miles per hour. So it's going to be rather windy for tomorrow as well when we're dealing with that rain and snow. Shauna, good evening to you. And hello there, Katie. Thank you all for tuning in. Austin saying this morning was insanely cold. Was out this morning getting bread while feeling the icy cold air hitting my face while wearing mask, gloves, and yeah, just again, it's cold. Yeah, it was. That's for sure. So Richie asking, and I think I saw some more comments here. So we've got how much snow for Bellsville, how much snow for Dillonvale, Gittingen Ferry. When are we getting the big snow in Steubenville? And and how much snow Bellsville. So again, I would put a lot of locations within a coating to an inch. I think that's where a lot of us are going to end up. This isn't going to likely be a big snowmaker, but you can get that quick burst of it, right? So it's not much, but it can come quickly. That quick burst of snow late morning. So, a lot of us are getting that quick inch or up to an inch of this wet, heavy snow. And when it comes in a quick burst like that, it's enough that it covers our roads. It can cause some slippery road conditions. But that being said, a lot of what we do see actually accumulate for tomorrow morning can actually then melt in the afternoon. It can get that situation, especially when we're dealing with some of that cold rain. Where do I think we could exceed an inch of snow? I think the best chance for that is north of I-70. I think there's at least a chance north of I-70 to see more than an inch. How about more than 2 inches? Well, I think the best chance for that is likely Columbiana County, Carroll County, maybe there, northern Tuscarawas County. In general, the further north of Route 22, the further north of I-70. I think that's ultimately the best chance to see totals exceed 2 inches. So for a lot of us, up to an inch, for areas north of I-70, maybe up to 2. And anything more than that's likely more confined towards, especially Columbiana County. I think that's ultimately the best chance to see up to 3 inches of snow. I don't see anything more than that, though. I think that's going to be the top line of it. But for a lot of us, we're under that threshold. We're closer to an inch, maybe some spots up to 2 north of I-70. That's likely the range. So, take where you live, north, south of I-70. If it's south of I-70, just a coating to an inch at most. And then you get north of I-70, up to an inch, maybe 2, towards Columbiana County. For tuning in Columbiana County, I think that's the best chance, up to 3 inches. That's the simplest way I think I could put it, where, depending on where you're tuning in from, that's roughly what I'd say in terms of accumulations. It shouldn't vary too much in the area, but I think we can see amounts, at least there's potential, I think, to exceed an inch more for areas north of I-70. You have that chance for more of that upper, threshold there. Totals look within a coating to an inch south of I-70, but north of I-70, I think, totals can exceed an inch. And for some spots, but likely not many, can exceed 2 inches of snow is probably the best way I could put it. And Shelly says, thanks, Nate. Stay warm. We'll try to do. That's for sure. It's going to be a tough task for tomorrow. Nikki saying blizzard. And yeah, blizzard conditions in some ways, certainly with the reduction of visibility we can have in place. Not so much with the blowing, drifting snow. We don't have too much of our snow cover left to create that. But yeah, the reduction of visibility will certainly be one of the aspects that could be more blizzard-like, if you will, as that's certainly one of the criterias for blizzard conditions, is that, low visibility with snow. And I think we have the potential to certainly get close to that. Again, we can see some very low visibility with that wet, heavy snow and those gusty winds for the latter part of tomorrow morning. Austin says not looking for the rain tomorrow or the wicked wind. Yeah, windy and some cold rain. That's going to make for cold conditions. That's for sure. Let's see. Catherine says Thursday have to go to Steubenville at 1:10. And she go Thursday at 1:10. So yeah, be dealing with your conditions in the afternoon. Steubenville on Thursday is just cold, some flurries, cloudy, and that's it. No impact road conditions Thursday afternoon. And then in terms of timing of snow again for tomorrow, I don't think we're dealing with too much up to 7, 8 o'clock in the morning. I think it's going to be a little past that mark. So I do think it spells for good news for schools. I think that a lot of schools can get by without delays. I think if there are delays, then it could yield cancellations because, again, I think delays will end up hurting more than helping. I think it's a situation where it's better to just get to school, and then the snow occurs, and then by the time school's out, roads are just wet. So I think that's the situation for tomorrow. If you're taking your kids to school or have kids wandering, I feel like that's the situation where that a lot of this is likely going to be a little bit past the mark. So I know, leading up to 8 a.m., I don't think there's too much in our area. But once we get past that, that's when it really starts to break out likely. So I think the timing could be good in that regard where, we can get through a lot of that morning rush hour, if you will. The once we get a little past that, I think is when it really starts to pick up and break out across the area. So I think that is good news in that way. And Jess, yeah, think schools are going to be canceled. That's my take on it. So I think that the timing is going to be a little past that point. So I think that's best bet for. Obviously, we'll keep an eye on radar. A lot of schools are going to be keeping an eye on conditions leading up to that point, but I just personally believe that a lot of this is likely going to be a little past that mark. We could have some, again, light wintry mix later tonight, but that core of that wet, heavy snow is likely past that mark, and it's more late morning. So I think it's a situation where you get to school, and then shortly after that, it can break out. It could be bad into midday, but then the roads are just wet for when kids, the school's letting out. The roads, it's just wet. And a lot of that snow that we can see accumulate could very well melt in the afternoon with the rain. Temperatures near 40 could very well be the case. Mandy says this for tomorrow morning. Yes. And you're tuning in from Carroll County. So I think Mandy there, good odds for, upwards of at least an inch. Maybe you could sneak in close to 2 inches, Mandy, there closer to Carroll County. So again, north of I-70 up to an inch. And I think some locations up to 2, you could roughly say about 1 to 2 inches. Right around there, I think, is possible north of I-70. Exceeding 2 inches, though, I don't think it's going to be a common sight. I think the best chance for that is going to be more into Columbiana County. It can be more in even northern Carroll County. In general, just areas further north in our region can get closer to 3 inches. But I don't think that's going to be anything that's widespread or common for tomorrow. And areas south of I-70 just likely getting that coating or trace even up to an inch, and that's going to be it. Because again, I do think Tyler County, a good portion of Wetzel County, southern Monroe, Noble could even just stay more rain for tomorrow. So that's where our true rain snow line could set up, that we see more of just a cold rain where we don't see enough of that drop in temperatures to get that change over to wet, heavy snow. That can be further south of I-70. So for a lot of areas south of I-70, it's likely just, a trace where you're getting just a little bit there on the tail end for tomorrow night, and then up to an inch. That would likely be the range, and that's going to be it. And then a little bit higher amounts possible north of I-70, but a lot of us are probably going to stay, anywhere within a trace to 2 inches. And I think anything past that is possible. I just don't think it's going to be widespread for us. Likely not quite to that extent, but I think it is possible. Please stay safe and warm tomorrow, and will do. You as well, Austin, and all of tuning in. Thank you so much, and definitely, stay safe tomorrow. I don't think that, a lot of the day is likely going to be okay. I'd watch late morning. So, you start getting very close, but especially just past that morning commute. I would really start to watch even by 8 a.m., even though I think it's a little past that. But, 8, 9 on through the latter part of the morning. And then, again, early tomorrow night, watch. So those are the 2 time periods we can see some areas of ice tomorrow night. In general, we can see some snow covered roads for late tomorrow morning. And outside of that, roads are just wet, likely through the afternoon hours tomorrow. And then some slick spots at most developing before they see that snow break out for tomorrow morning's commute. So just still use some caution in general as we go through tomorrow. Debbie says any slippery roads Thursday morning on Route 7 North. And yeah, again, I think that Thursday morning is so those areas of ice is what to watch for. So it's more of you're not dealing with widespread slippery roads, right? You're not dealing with widespread snow-covered roads, widespread impacts. It's more of that isolated or scattered. It's just more in spots, right? So when we deal with, some water can linger on these roads, and it's primarily anything that's left untreated as temperatures are dropping before crews can get out to treat it. That's when you can get those areas of ice. So, by Thursday morning, if crews are getting out and treating most of the roads, then it could very well be okay. I'd still use some caution. Again, it's more of those slick spots or areas of ice that can develop. We're not getting much of in terms of snow accumulation at all overnight Wednesday into Thursday morning. And really just a few snow showers are possible during that point throughout the day on Thursday. It's just a few flurries. That's not going to amount to any snow accumulation. It's little or no snow accumulation overnight on Wednesday. So it's less of a dealing with any snow, and it's just more of some areas of ice as that water, these roads will remain wet, and then temperatures drop and it can freeze, and we can get some slick spots to develop is what we're watching for at that point on overnight Wednesday into Thursday morning. Amanda says, what time frame is Friday? Can we have an adult snow day? And for Friday, that snow, I think it can be in line with the morning. I think it could, I think Friday's snow could end up having a little more of an impact possibly on schools than what we see tomorrow, just because the timing there is in the morning, and, it's just not looking to let up late morning. So, delays and is likely not going to do anything there Friday because, again, the snow just continuing into the afternoon. So I think that schools could be more impacted Friday, where we can get more snow days Friday. And then from there, it's just very cold into Monday. It's just very cold. So we can get some more snow later Saturday. Sunday, snow shower possible, but it's not too much. Really, it's the temperatures. That's the main story at that point. Late this weekend, highs only lower 20s. It's a very cold day on Sunday. Lows back single digits likely into Monday morning. So by Monday, it's just very cold, more than us dealing with a lot of snow into Monday. It's just going to be very cold. But yeah, Friday schools, I think, could be impacted. Friday could very well be more impactful for schools than tomorrow with the timing, precipitation type, and all those details. And then Saturday can be impactful too. Obviously, we're not talking about school at that point, but I think that if you're heading out anywhere later Saturday, it can be impactful. Roads could get slick late Saturday. Roads can be slick throughout the day Friday. So certainly just some time periods to watch. And of course, tomorrow we'll further break down what's coming our way in general. The next 2 days we'll further break down the finer details of Friday and Saturday. Do like we did today, get more hour by hour on road conditions and accumulations, and we'll iron out all those finer details the next 2 days for your Friday and Saturday. But for now, we'll keep a close eye on conditions for tomorrow. Stay tuned for the latest coming up. News 9 at 10 on Fox 9, News 9 tonight at 11. I'll be going live for those shows, of course, bringing you the latest at that point. And for tomorrow morning, make sure to stay tuned. Chief Meteorologist Jeff Exline, he'll be in. Of course, the good thing is, right, you can wake up, tune into News 9 Sunrise, and Jeff will let you know how those conditions are setting up across the area. And again, he'll likely be on air there starting at 5 a.m., even before a lot of the core snow breaks out. So going to be a handy tool tomorrow to have to tune into News 9 Sunrise. Chief Meteorologist Jeff Exline is going to be tracking that snow moving in and across our area throughout News 9 Sunrise. So going to be a handy tool to have for tomorrow to wake up a little early, see how those conditions are favoring for you, and not a bad idea to, again, allow yourself a little extra time in general for tomorrow as you step out the door. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in. Appreciate it as always. Hope everyone stays safe for tomorrow. And again, stay tuned for the latest coming up. We bring you the latest on not only for tomorrow, but even into Friday and Saturday for the next edition of Nate at 8, as well as News 9 at 10 on Fox 9, News 9 tonight at 11. Have a great night. Stay safe. I'll see all of you on the next edition of Nate at 8.